All right, our next guest is a special one. He is the cut man you see everywhere. He is Mr. One More Round himself. Of course, you've seen him on the Rocky movies, the Creed, and of course in some UFCs and the big high profile boxing matches. It's the one, it's the only, Stitch Duran. All right, woo, Stitch. We got a big. We're good, man. We got a big applause, kind of like the recent Top Rank shows. You know, big crowds going on right now in the Top Rank bubble. As you know, Stitch, you're in the bubble right now. From what it looks like, what's been the difference being in a bubble, getting the food served to you, going to different fights, getting the testing? What's been I'm sure it's just a big difference, but what have you experienced so far?
Yeah, it's kind of like the boxing version of Shawshank Redemption. You know, kind of like the modern version of it because, and we make fun of it. You know, we're in the bubble. Literally, I'm in my room maybe 20 hours a day. The only time I go out is for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and get back to your room. And the weigh-ins, which are always fun. Spend a little bit more time out there. And then the fights, and then we come back into the room. But, yeah, that's where I'm at, man. So I'll kind of show you real quick where I'm at. This is my view of Las Vegas.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah, nice. Well,
that's a lot better than my view.
Tell me if it's nice, but no, it's, you know what, it's overall it's a great experience. You know, just to be involved with this historical moment here of we being the blueprint for boxing as to if you're going to conduct fights, this could be the way to do it. And working with the ESPN people, the Top Rank people, the boxing people, everybody's really coming together as one. So it's a little different, but I'm glad to be here.
And it's so quiet from what I see. It's so quiet in the arena. Can you hear the other corner while you're working on your fighter?
Yeah, of course. You know, it's easy to do. And it's funny because I guess Top Rank has an app where you could tune in and you could actually speak and do and all that. And you could kind of hear them up above, but you could definitely hear the people on the other side. And so, you know, what used to be an advantage maybe isn't an advantage anymore.
I just want to know before Zach asks you something, I want to know, how did you get into being a cut man? Like, how did you start out? What was your first fight? Was it just something you've been into, or was it just a coincidence? Just like, how'd you get into it?
No, it's I have a real good story, man. It's I grew up as a farm worker in the Central Valley of California, and I always wanted to play baseball and walked on to a college but didn't have a car, and so I joined the military. And in 1974, they stationed me in a place called Thailand. I didn't even know what the hell Thailand was, you know, and this was at the end of the Vietnam War. But I always said if I went to the Orient, I'd want to study the martial arts. So I saw my first Muay Thai fight. Had some friends that were already there like 3 months before me. So, you know, I'm thinking I'm Mexican. I'm thinking, well, fights is boxing, right? This guy kicks a guy in the head and knocks him out. And that became my addiction, you know. So that following Monday on the base, they had Taekwondo. Taekwondo Thailand to me sounds the same, you know, being a young kid, no different. So for the 3 months we trained with the Koreans and they left, and then the Thais took over and they kind of transitioned us. And but from there, when I got back to the States, I opened up my own school of kickboxing. And I was a trainer, I was a promoter, was a manager. I also had to learn to be a cut man just for the economics, you know, of not hiring anybody. But I wanted to know all aspects of the game. And that just kind of floated to the top. And I made the move to Vegas 26 years ago to do this, and paid off.
That's a pretty crazy story. I was going to say, because you've been in the military and that, and you've opened your own gym and you're a cut man. So did you like get any medical degree for that, or did you just kind of dive straight into it? You just managed to get the gist.
Nah, you know, Zach, I only have a high school diploma, you know, and I tell people it's not because I was dumb. It's just because I couldn't afford to go to school and continue an education. And then growing up in a small town, I didn't know that, you know, if you talk to counselors, they would guide you and they would, you know, do this. Well, I wasn't familiar with none of that at all. So I just kind of winged things and joined the military. But that's what got me here. So yeah, everything had a reason, you know. But never would I have thought I would have been in this position 30, 40 years ago.
I mean, that's Pretty good story. It's pretty for me. It's most things here because I'm 20 years old. You know, I'm a student. I'm trying to get that money. I'm working right now. You know, trying to find a way, and you know, with Alex as well. You know, eventually even move out to Vegas as well. So gives me a bit of motivation to kick up.
Well, let me motivate you a little bit more, Zach, because there's a simple formula to not knowing what I know now, right? And not knowing that I had counselors that would guide me and give me some encouragement. I have none of that. So my job has now been is to give information out. But I'll tell you and Alex, because you were just talking about what we've all talked about is reaching our goals and reaching our dreams. But there's really that one line, and we talked about it yesterday, that one line that we're scared to cross to get what we want to get. We've all been through it. But and we were talking about it last night at dinner with the other people. If you don't cross that line, you'll never get there, and you know, have that confidence. So if anything at all, you know, always come to that. You will come to that point and jump over that line, bro. It's not that bad.
I definitely will. When the opportunity comes, I'm going to take it. And that was good to hear. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make it like everyone else, of course.
Of course.
Stitch, I want to know what's your most memorable fight? What is you know, something that comes to mind that's like, oh my God, this is just your best memory in a corner?
Oh man, there's tons of them, bro. You know, that's one of the things that I've been blessed with is I've had so many great moments and fights, and you know, and I get to the point where now, like in MMA, just pick a fighter. I'll tell you a great story, you know. But you know, working recently, you know, of course, with Tyson Fury when he fought Deontay Wilder, that was great, and the fight before Vladimir Klitschko when he fought Anthony Joshua, you know, and boxing, those are great, you know, and MMA, there's tons of them.
Yeah, I mean, I want to actually ask a bit. Did you do the second fight, Fury Wilder 2, where Fury won? That one.
Man, you haven't been reading the news, Zach? Yeah, exactly.
It's the nerves, man. It's the nerves, you know. It's you know,
Yeah.
so new to this, but
Yeah. So what happened there is Tyson Fury, of course, you know, is a big fighter, and I worked with Vladimir Klitschko when he beat Vladimir Klitschko, and I thought Vladimir just had a bad day because Tyson Fury's techniques weren't all that professional. But I saw the first fight when he fought Deontay Wilder, and what a great fight. And, you know, I saw the fight when he got cut, and then they get the rematch for him and Deontay Wilder, and based on that big cut, they brought me in, and did a lot of interviews, and you know, I was there as an insurance policy, but that just kind of put me at a different platform because even the cut man that worked with Tyson Fury, Jorge Capetillo, the fight before, that kept him in the game and got the victory for him, he says, bring in Stitch because he has a lot more experience. So he knew the magnitude of this type of fight, and to work with Tyson Fury has been one of the great stories that I can say that I was involved in. Another historical moment.
that's pretty impressive, you know. And I just want to say again, obviously you in Fury's corner. Do you get to choose what corner you're in, or do you just get assigned to one?
Who are you talking about here?
Just in general. If there's like a fight coming out, like with Fury Wilder, do you get to choose whose corner you're in, or do you just get the call?
Yeah, they choose me actually. In boxing, it's different than MMA or bare knuckle fights, which I do now. But in boxing, the fighter, the team will hire me to work with us specifically, and that's what Tyson Fury did. So in MMA, bare knuckle fights, the promoter brings us in, and then usually I'll work in the corner that the promoter puts me in, which is usually the house fighters. And but like here in the bubble for the top rank ESPN fights, what they do now is because you have myself and Mike Basil, the other cut man, and we brought in Bob Ware, which is Floyd Mayweather's cut man. So there's three of us. So what happens is that when the fighters get on the scale, then there's two cards that they have. It's like the Academy Awards. So they pick a card, envelope, I should say, and whoever's name is on that envelope is who will work with them as a cut man, whether it be me or whether it be Mike Basil. So that's how they do it here, and that's, you know, for the most part in MMA. But in boxing, it's normally the team that brings me in.
What is your most memorable moment with Vladimir Klitschko? I mean, you guys have been all over the world together. You've been in the corners. I mean, and Vitaly as well. But what is like your greatest moment with Vladimir?
You know, there's two, and actually it was the first fight of his career and the last fight of his career. So I'll give them both to you, Alex. And I thought, to me, they were pretty instrumental. But going back in 1991, Vitaly, his brother, says 1992, but it was when the Soviet Union first broke. All these different countries went into their own countries, right? Well, the Ukraine, they promoted the first professional boxing and kickboxing fights in Kiev. And at that time, I had a kickboxer, Mark Longo from Denver, Colorado. So I went with a team of boxers and some other kickboxers, and the Klitschko brothers they were young kids, but they were, at that time, they were already superstars. They were Olympians, and I think Vitaly was a world champion kickboxer, Vladimir a boxer, and so I saw them, but I really didn't meet them. And they came to Vegas, and I met them, and we talked about that moment when I was in Kiev, and we created a bond, and then so going fast forward, when Vladimir Klitschko and Lennox Lewis did the fight scenes in the movie Ocean's 11, I just happened to be the cut man for Vladimir Klitschko, which is, they brought me in for that, right? And but later on, he had lost his world title to Lehman Brewster, and I used to co-host a radio show in Las Vegas, and my friend and I, Nick Ward, are standing at the MGM watching people go into the arena for can't remember what fight, but Emmanuel Stewart at that time was an HBO commentator and also the coach for Vladimir Klitschko, and he's walking by us in his tuxedo, and he says, Stitch, he goes, I need to talk to you about Vladimir. And I kind of look at my buddy. I said, did you see what I saw? Yeah, So the next day he called me and asked me to work with Vladimir, and of course it was an honor. But the fight that I worked with him was here at Caesar's Palace. He fought Devereux Williamson. It was his first comeback fight after he lost his world title, and so big fight for him, right? So during the fight, he's looking okay. He's not looking great, but he won the first 3 rounds. In the 4th round, he gets dropped, right? And then in the 5th round, and that's why you have to know the game outside of just the mechanics of working cuts, but the scoring system. But in the 5th round, he got an unintentional headbutt, big old cut that just, it was a bad cut. And I had worked on those cuts before, but I knew percentage-wise, the best chance for him to win that fight would have been right there. So when the doctor came in, I told Vladimir and Vitaly as he sat down, I said, look, you got a bad cut. You're winning the fight. I'm going to have the doctor stop the fight, knowing that it's going to go to the scorecards. So when they sat down, and then when the doctor came, she says, well, what do you think? I go like this, and I opened it up, right? And he knew that was a good indication. Stopped the fight, went to the scorecards. He ended up winning the fight and became heavyweight champ of the world. So that paid off. If I would have been wrong, you and I probably wouldn't be talking. So that was the start of my career. So he really knew that I was there to take care of him, and we always had a lot of special moments. So the last fight with Anthony Joshua at Wembley Stadium, 90,000 people. I get there. I see him only the day before the fight because my daughter had got married in Crete, and but we're in the dressing room, and I'm talking to Vladimir and Vitaly, and then Vitaly leaves, and finally, as I'm leaving, I tell Vladimir, I put my hand on his shoulder, I said, look, don't worry about nothing tomorrow. I'm going to take care of you like you're my son. And I leave it, because psychology is not only the mechanics, but that's important also. Have them a confidence knowing the game, the whole system. So here we are in front of 90,000 people, Alex and Zach, and the whole world is watching, and Michael Buffer's ready to do the announcing, and I'm putting the final Vaseline on Vladimir, and we're about this far apart. And in front of all this whole world, he looks at me and says, you could call me son. And that just gave me chills, but I knew that I had gotten into his mind the night before, because, being a fighter, that the night before, all kinds of things are going through your head, and you're there by yourself, right? And so how do you calm yourself? You figure ways to keep your adrenaline controlled, how to just stay calm. So that moment right there calmed him. And he recognized that, and he mentioned that. And, a week later he calls me and, hey, Daddy, so those are 2 great moments that I've had with Vladimir Klitschko. Plus, Vitaly, Love them both, man. Still do.
I just want to say quickly before Alex says something, that's a really incredible story, both of them, and especially for the Fury Joshua fight. I live in London. I'm from the same place as Joshua, Watford. That I remember that day. It was such an important day for me. So many things happened for me during that day, not just the fight, but personal things as well. And I just want to ask, with the weight of that event, could you tell, like, is there a difference that you feel that with fights in London as opposed to America? Is there a different feeling at all?
Yeah, I've always said 90,000 Brits in Wembley Stadium is like 150,000 fans from some other country, because the Brits were so great when it came to being, they're great fans. But what made that moment special there after the fights is I did the Balboa movie when Rocky fought his last fight. And even though he lost, the fans in the audience were Rocky, Rocky, Rocky. So they showed him that respect, right? Well, the fans in Wembley Stadium did the same thing with Vladimir Klitschko and Anthony Joshua. And they showed him that respect. And when I had spoke to Vladimir, he says, Stitch, of all the respect that I've gotten throughout the world, I never got the respect like I did at Wembley Stadium. So right now, him and Anthony Joshua are friends. But yeah, I love going to London, and the fans are they're spectacular. Not only them, but throughout the whole UK. Really the best fans. And, when Ricky Hatton used to come here, and, all of these British fighters, they take over Las Vegas, so Conor McGregor, when he comes, the Irish take it over, so yeah, I love going up there and having a good time.
That's good to hear. I mean, it gives a smile on my face, and it's good to know that we're passionate fans over here. And it's different because I feel like here, obviously, there's you've got fighters, but I feel like it's not like in America. Like here, you've got Joshua, where a whole country will get behind you, and I think that's what's really passionate. So yeah, it was good to hear. Definitely.
I've always also worked with Amir Khan, and I would have loved, but I worked with him here in the States. I would have loved to have gone to London or even just Manchester, where he's from, and just do the fights, because I've been throughout the UK, all over the UK, and everywhere I've gone, the fans have been tremendous.
Yeah, you took the question right out of my mouth, Zach. I was going to ask, comparing the American crowds versus the European and the UK crowds. That's why I want to see Canelo and Billy Joe Saunders, because I think the UK invading Vegas with the Mexican audience, who is a raucous Cinco de Mayo weekend, as you know, Cinco de Mayo, and then the Mexican Independence September. It's always a party, and those two coming together, I think would be an amazing thing.
Yeah, my name was actually thrown out to work with Billy Joe Saunders.
So
about me is I'm neutral, but and I was telling him, it's very seldomly do I work with Mexican Latin fighters. I work with a lot of Europeans and guys from that side of the water. So, but yeah, for me it's a business. Whoever hires me, I'm like a hitman. I'm like a hired gun. You bring me in to do my job, and my job is to do my job. So.
I respect it, man. I'm with you. Speaking of doing your job, you do MMA as well as boxing and the bare knuckle, like you said. Is there a different type of cut? Like, do you notice that, these cuts are more common, or this is a cut you only get in MMA as opposed to boxing, as opposed to bare knuckle? Like, do you just see different stuff when people go back to your corner?
Yeah, the cuts you see in boxing, which a lot of times there's one, and if you're in a tough fight, you might have two. If you're in a real tough fight, you might have three or four. So, those are all the basic cuts, right? When you get into MMA, multiple cuts are common, and they're deep, they're bigger. So if you worked on MMA cuts, then you could do boxing in a heartbeat. Bare knuckle fights on the same thing are multiple cuts in volume, 6, 7, 8 cuts. They happen. The percentage of a fighter getting cut is high, 60, 70%, so they do happen. But yeah, and that's why, that's a good question there, Alex, because if I have an assignment and then somebody calls me to do another assignment, I'll recommend another cut man, but I normally recommend cut men that work in MMA because they're used to multiple cuts. And if you go into a boxing show, man, you can be eating popcorn and working on a cut at the same time. It's that easy. But boxing pays a lot more, which is great. So,
Where's the worst spot to get a cut? You would say
this one right here, the one that
Badu Jack. Oh,
because-
Vladimir as well.
Oh, exactly, the Badu Jack cut. Same one, because you know that big blood vessel. When you get excited, you laugh, and I thought I won on Zach right now. If you pop that cut, that vein, because it's a little bit wider than the other ones, it'll bleed like a pig. And to this day, my bloodiest fight was in MMA. Duran fought Jonathan Goulet from Canada, and the cut was only about this big, but it severed that vein, and Duran bled. Literally had blood from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet. Both fighters did, because they were grappling and all that, but there was so much blood that it made me nauseated, and that's the only time I've ever gotten nauseated from a fight. But it's that vein right there, bro. You know, that one is tough to stop.
I actually want to ask, that's pretty mental, Tim, but I want to ask, obviously there's a difference with working on cuts between MMA and boxing. And, you know, you've been in movies such as Rocky and Creed, and obviously that's reality is different, obviously, in a movie, it changes. Yeah. And I want to know, even though you're acting, does your kind of job, do they make you do things that are different to how, you know, you prepare and act in a real fight?
No, that's a good question, and nobody's ever asked that, but I'll give you a good answer. Is you know, when they brought me in, I told the first one was with Creed, you know, but I've done 6 movies, but they bring me in for my expertise. And you know, Ryan Coogler, during the Creed movie, Creed 1, I told Ryan, young director, I said, you know, if I see something that's not authentic, I'm gonna bring it up to your attention. He goes, Stitch, that's what we brought you in for. You know, and so they bring me in, and me to, like, Creed 1 and Creed 2. I had a lot of influence on doing things the right way. You know, like the first day that I got there, Zach, they're doing one of the scenes where Ivan Drago's son knocks out one of the opponents, and the guy's down, and the doctor lifts his head up and he's checking out his eyes. And I told the director, I said, no, it don't work that way, because when a guy gets knocked out, you know, you examine his eyes, but you don't pick his head up because he might have a neck injury, right? So they redid that scene. And, you know, so it's pretty authentic. I'm not an actor, don't want to be an actor, but it's easy for me to do what I do because this is what I do during the fights. But we were talking about this yesterday. There's a couple scenes, one in Rocky and then one in Creed, that are myths in boxing. And I told Sylvester Stallone on the Rocky one, when he's telling Mick the old famous line, "Cut me, Mick, cut me." Remember? We all know that line, right? So we don't do that because, number one, to cut somebody in a ring, Rocky's eyes is completely closed, and he's telling Mickey, "Cut me, Mick," so he could see. Well, you don't do that, and Mick cuts it, right? You don't do that because, number one, you're performing surgery in the ring, and you're not a doctor. But number two is, now instead of having a swollen eye, you're going to get blood in the eye. So that's a big disadvantage. So I told Sylvester Stallone, I said, countless of times I've had to educate people that was Hollywood and it's not real life. Well, in the movie Creed, same thing. His eye is closed. And Ryan Coogler asked me, well, what do you think if you put your fingers? He goes, yeah, that's Hollywood. So the doctor comes and asks Creed, you know, how many fingers do you see? So I go, you know, because I'm working with, but I'm from behind. I go, and he says 2. And then, okay, well, how many do you see? Okay, well, I see 4, and they let him go. But that's all Hollywood. Good question, though.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I actually also want to know, so obviously you're in the fighting game, you've probably been asked all the questions apart from the one I just asked. But I want to know, you said you played baseball when you were younger. And is that your favorite sport outside of fighting? Do you have any other sports that you just love watching? You know, as you're not involved in it, you can just sit back, relax, and watch it.
No, you know, it's funny because for the most part, I don't watch any other sports, you know, and not because I don't want to, it's because of the time-wise. A lot of the events that I have are on weekends, right? So, like on Saturday, I'm in my room and I'll watch maybe college football. But usually when the baseball games or football games are on Sunday, I'm traveling. And by the time I get home, I don't want to watch the sports. So I don't follow them like I used to. My whole dedication has been martial arts and boxing. And, you know, even now to the point, I don't even watch as much MMA fights as I used to, you know. So once you do so many of them, you just, unless there's a big fight, then I'll tune in. But for the most part, once I'm outside of the arena, I'm spending time with my family.
Nice.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, speaking of some MMA, you were in Robbie Lawler's corner during that second fight for the championship against Rory McDonald. Round 4, the horn sounds. He spits blood all over the ground. He stares down at Rory McDonald. Door opens, right? And you just come in sprinting like, whoa, man, I got to clean you up. What's going through your mind? What is the corner telling this maniac? Like, so much must be going on in those 60 seconds.
Robbie Lawler, I have great history with Robbie, man. Number one, he's very astute when it comes to combat sports, MMA, but boxing also. But yeah, that's right. I remember I run in, but that lip, it's like somebody got his lip and just got to spit that blood out. But my job is to get to him as soon as possible because of the severity of the cut, right? And start direct pressure and bring him back into the ring or into the corner. But yeah, he was ready to fight, and turned out to be one of the greatest fights. Probably, I think it was my last fight, big fight with the UFC, because I know they had a small show the day after, and I saw Robbie in the back, and he came up to me and thanked me and all that. But I saw his scar. They did a nice job sewing him up. So when it comes to sewing, it was easy because it was a straight cut. But Robbie, what a fight, man! Even Rory McDonald, both of them were with. I remember Rory when he was a young phenom at 17, and so to see these guys go to battle and to see that blood I loved it, man. So, and it's nice to be part of their history, right?
That's part of their history, and I don't think those guys have been the same since that fight. I think like that was you don't leave the same after that kind of war, man. Just toe to toe, just right in front of each other. Just a phenomenal fight.
It was tough.
That's pretty mental. I mean, I'm trying to say, I know you said you don't watch much sports, but sometimes, like, obviously you can only be in one corner. So let's say if the opponent's got a really bad cut, do you ever see like, oh, if I was in that corner, I'd know exactly what I'd do. Like, they're doing it wrong.
That guy's messing it up.
Yeah. No, when I do see fights, I do study the other corners. I always still study. And, but yeah, during a fight, I'll see, well, yeah, let me get to that. Let me backtrack. I always look and see who the corner is because it'll tell you the caliber of fighter that he is. If you have a good coach, of Emmanuel Stewart, Freddie Roach, this type of guy, then the guy's been properly trained. If you see this guy that, just doesn't look like a trainer, then that his probability of being trained properly is slim. So I do look at that. I also look at the cut man, how he handles himself, how his equipment is handled. I look at all that, and during the fight, yeah, if they get cut, then of course, I always study them.
Do you bring all your tools and equipment with you everywhere you go, or is it provided to you by the promotion? I always wanted to know that.
I always tell people is always prepare for the worst case scenario, and don't ever depend on a promoter to do anything for you, because if they don't, then what do you do, right? So right. Yeah, you are your own stuff, man. And let's say I'm doing a boxing show, Alex, and I'm working with one fighter, but I bring enough equipment, gauze, and tape for 5 fighters, just in case I got to wrap his hands once. Maybe he don't like it, I have to do it again. But you always bring more than enough just for those moments in case that one moment happens.
Is it universal rules across the board for boxing and mixed martial arts? Can you use the same Vaselines or presses? It's all the same stuff, or are you allowed different stuff?
No, it's a good question again. For the most part, universal is adrenaline chloride 1/1000. That's the method we use on the cuts, on the swab. That's a vessel constrictor, so that closes up the blood vessels. In Nevada, they let you use Avitine and Thrombin, though we don't use it, but they're authorized. Quick Aid is another one, but for the most part, the adrenaline chloride on the worldwide is the basic foundation of stuff that they let us use. Now we do like a title fight in the UK or Europe. There in the ring, the doctor will give you your own bottle of adrenaline chloride 1/1000. But normally you bring your own supplies.
Yeah, I've got a question. So obviously you've worked with lots of big names. You've worked on like amazing fights. But I want to know if there's one fight that hasn't happened yet, maybe a sequel or a fight that needs to happen. What fight would you love to be involved in? If there was a dream fight you could pick and be involved in, MMA or boxing, what would that be?
I've done them all, man. You know, and the thing with the thing with the fighters from now, a lot of them still have to still get it to a certain area. Well, let's go back. One fight I would have wanted to do, and I had the probability, a close possibility of doing it, but it didn't happen because, well, you tell me why. But this is the fight with when Conor McGregor fought Floyd Mayweather, right? I was in New York. I was doing Bellator. I was working a Bellator show at Madison Square Garden. And I walk in the back dressing room and I see John Kavanagh, Conor McGregor's coach. And I've worked with Conor before when I was with the UFC. And so John comes and, you know, we give each other hugs. And he says, Stitch, I want to talk to you about working with Conor. And of course, you know, the biggest fight at that time was that one. And so we went over some details. We spoke and all that. And I went back to cage side to work the fights. And during the break, I come back and I talked to John Kavanagh, and he says, hey, I just finished talking to Conor, and he likes the idea. So I'm going to have Conor's people get a hold of you. And they did. You know, his rep got a hold of me, and we went through some business things and all that, and talked to my attorney. My attorney sent him a proposal on fee-wise, and we're ready to close a deal. And the attorney that was working with him came back and says that I was too expensive. And that was it, no counter offer. But during that time, Conor McGregor was going to be training at the UFC Apex Center at their training facility. And being that the UFC had let me go, I don't think Dana wanted me to be in the corner with Conor McGregor, because it would have raised a lot of, they would have been busting Dana's balls and saying, hey, you know, you got rid of Stitch, but Stitch is back with Conor McGregor. So that fight never happened, only because of politics. It's crazy. A lot of people, yeah. And, you know, the thing about it, I would have helped him out because I know McGregor's style. I know boxing, and I know MMA. I know the systems to it. And Conor McGregor's coming into a system he wasn't very familiar with. Neither was John Kavanagh when it comes to boxing, and especially boxing in Las Vegas, right? So, and that's where I'm from. So it would have been a big plus for him. But I guess the people that made the decision didn't think so. And John Kavanagh says it was about the money, you know. But if they would have, I would have done it just for the exposure, just to say I did it. So that would be fantasy fights.
What's the order of importance in terms of when somebody comes back into the corner? Is it the cuts? Is it the swelling, the bruising? What's the first thing you attack right away?
Well, you know, when good question, man. You guys are pretty good at what you guys do, man. And I got to give you credit. But you know what I do with fighters is I'll do a lot of preventive maintenance. And like Tyson Fury, for example, good example is when him and I sat down and we spoke. I said, look, I'm not going to wait till things start happening. I'm going to keep ice on you and keep the KO swell on you every round just to do preventive maintenance. But as soon as, let's say there's a cut, well, my job is to get in there and get to him as soon as possible and start applying direct pressure. But let's say you have multiple cuts, one here, one here, one here. You go after the priority ones first. And on the ones are, you know, they're very bad. The blood's going to get in the eye, that type of thing. So you kind of work on them. You work on all of them, but you put heavy emphasis on the ones up here because that's where the blood. Down here, even though it looks bad, it doesn't give a fighter a disadvantage. And when a doctor or a referee stops the fight, that is the key thing, is when a fighter is at a disadvantage. And the cuts up there could do that. Here, they look bad, but they're cuts.
We've got a couple of questions, but I want to first ask, like, obviously the sole purpose of your job is to be a cut man, but do you prefer it in a fight? Would you rather like watch the fight, you know, he takes little damage, or do you prefer it when the fighter gets a cut because you get to be more involved?
Yeah, I love cut, bro. You know, of course. Yeah, you know, now it's both. You know, I just kind of wait. It's the fight becomes longer when you're just sitting there, not doing nothing, just watching the fights, opposed to, when the bell rings, you go in there and you work. Then he goes out there and he fights. And during the time that he's fighting, well, I'm busy preparing my stuff for when the bell rings again. And so that's, staying active is always better. Working on cuts is a lot of fun. But if they don't get cut, then, they don't get cut. But during I'm still doing preventive maintenance.
I mean, I also want to ask, obviously, especially in MMA, there's different commissions. So, for example, as you know, like the commission in New York may be a bit stricter than in Las Vegas. And does that, so like when you fight in somewhere like New York and you corner a fight, does that kind of affect your approach on when you go to cover cuts? Does that, because they're going to be a bit more strict?
Yes, of course. Tell you, man, you guys are very good. Yes, of course. And what I do is now I'll go into a new place and I'll go and I'll meet the ringside doctors and let them know that here's what we do. And if you give it these opportunities, of course, the doctors have the final say. But, we're there to work and so I'll go meet with them. But a lot of times the doctors already know who I am, at least on my position, right? And like New York, we've already, because they are a little harder. California is a little bit more stricter, but they know that I'm there to take care of the fighters and I'm not there to break any rules. So they give me that flexibility and I've had doctors where, they want me to make the decision, so so they have a lot of trust in me, but they know I'm there to take care of the fighter.
Stitch, who's the most intimidating fighter you've been in the corner with, just from the locker room or the walk or all together?
Chuck Liddell. Chuck.
Wow.
Chuck to me was a good guy, but he was just intimidating, right? I mean, and I always say Chuck Liddell had the kind of punches that would penetrate and create long-term damage, right? But in the same token, he has a heart, because after every fight, his coach John would call me and he would say, Chuck and I just want to call and say thanks for working in our corner, right? Chuck Liddell was definitely Jason Mahan Miller. I'll tell you behind the scenes story is he fought George St. Pierre in WEC, and he got cut. And so after the fights, my job is to go in there and clean him up. So I'm cleaning him up, and he tells me, he says, "Get the fuck out of my life," and I just walked away. And months later, I saw him. He said, "Nah, man, I was just kidding." I said, "I don't care." I just walked away, But Chuck Liddell was very intimidating. I would hate to have fought him in a ring, in a cage, definitely not in a bar, but a nice guy.
I mean, also to kind of counter what Alex said in his question, is there any fighter that you wouldn't want in the opposite corner? So like Tony Ferguson, who cuts people up, you'd hate to work on the other guy's corner because he's creating all sorts of problems for you.
Yeah, David Loazo, I used to call David Loazo my employer because he would give me work if I was working on the other side. And he was great with his elbows. And, he would just cut guys up. But, yeah, I'll look at these guys. Their style type of fighting. But I prepare for everybody, because everybody's susceptible to get cut, whether it's ground and pound, whether it's an elbow, whether it's a knee. But my whole focus is right here. Their whole face. That's it.
Nice.
I know you said you try to stay neutral, but I saw you a couple weeks ago. My friend Adam Lopez, who is a friend of the show, a guest of the show, you kept that face together, man, because the last 3 or 4 rounds I was watching at home, Stitch, and I was like, oh my God, just make it to the finish line. But you're there with Buddy McGirt. The fight is super close. And you play a pivotal part in just making sure Adam just makes it to the finish line and gets to the scorecards. Do you end up getting all that energy? I mean, you're right there. Do you go like, oh my God, like this is big time. It's a close fight. I'm in on it. I'm here to save the day in a way. But do you just get all that energy from that fight, like when it goes down like that?
Of course, that's what makes our job, not even a job, is that adrenaline rush and knowing that you're literally making a difference in a person's career, in a person's lifestyle. And, just to be part of that is pretty awesome. But yeah, and you're right. I try to be neutral, but they're just certain bonds with certain guys that I've created throughout this whole process that I can't forget them, you know. And like Vitor Belfort says, he says, when I see Stitch walking into the dressing room, even though I know he's working on the other side, he brings that calming effect, you know. And you know, those are the kind of things where, I mean, it's often, you know, you get a guy, and these are men, they give me a kiss after the fight and they say, Stitch, I love you, you know. And you know what it's like, you know, it's stuff you just don't give away. It's stuff that is done with pure respect. I'll give you a quick story with Chuck. You talk about Chuck Liddell and Wanderlei Silva, two of the toughest guys in the world, right? Well, when they fought, I had Wanderlei's a friend of mine. I had known him through the days in Pride, and the Brazilians gave me the nickname Santana. So we've always had a good relationship. But about a week before that fight, it was December the 29th, here at the MGM, I saw Wanderlei at the gym, and I said, you know, Wanderlei, that's my birthday. I'm going to give you some good karma. So I left it at that. And I'm working in Chuck Liddell's corner, and it's a brutal fight. They're both, you could just hear the punches, man. And they're hitting each other, and they're cracking each other. And at the end of the fight, Chuck has a cut. I clean him up, and I go to the other side, and Leon Tabbs, the cut man, is working on Wanderlei, and Wanderlei's all swollen up. And I mean, what a brutal fight, man. And I say, you know, Wanderlei, how are you? He goes, no, Steve, I'm okay. And then after this great fight, he looks at me and says, Stitch, happy birthday. And I said, man, if that don't melt your heart, this guy was probably in the toughest fight of his life, and he wished me happy birthday right in the middle of the ring, just between him and I, you know. So great moments like that's what I'm talking about.
Wow.
Yeah.
Zach, you got anything?
No, I mean, I'm pretty.
That was a pretty epic. Yeah, that was like, whoa, that caught me off guard right there.
No, hey, man, it blew my mind. You know, I mean, how do you think I felt? You know,
right.
Because they were in a brutal fight, and his face is swollen, and Leon's working on him, and, you know, with an ice pack, and, you know, I go there, hey, you know, Wanderlei, how you doing? Oh, no, Stitch, I'm okay. And Stitch, happy birthday. I said, oh, wow, man, crazy. You know, Fedor Emelianenko, let me tell you one about Fedor. We all know Fedor, right? Legendary.
Of course, the legend.
So I'm in Japan working with Josh Barnett for Pride fights. And Josh would pay me to go work with him exclusively, but all these guys would want me to wrap their hands. So Josh says, you know what? I'm paying to bring this guy here. If you want him to wrap your hands, you got to pay him $500. So, man, I'd make $2,000, $3,000 easy every time Josh fought. But this time, Fedor had just come back from breaking his thumb. The first fight back, I think he was fighting Mark Hunt. And the promoter comes and asks me if I could wrap Fedor's hands. And, of course, he's at this level. And I was so excited. I said, yeah, of course. I didn't even talk money. So I get in the dressing room, and I've worked with Russians before, so I know they're very quiet and very calm, very stoic. But I like to communicate with them and talk to them. And I'm wrapping Fedor's hands, and I'm talking to him, and he's not responding. Maybe just a yes or no, and this and that, and open and close. And finally, I finished wrapping his hands, and I said, how do they feel? He goes, super. Brother, that's all he said, man. I walked, my feet touching the ground, and after that, we're walking back the hallway to the bus after the fights, and he had won, and he calls Josh and I in to his dressing room, and placebo, you know, we drink. So we had shots of vodka with Fedor. But wow. The second half of that was the last time I worked with him at the Bellator fights. I walk into the hotel, and he's in the lobby there with all his team, and comes up to me, and there's Fedor. He's Russian. You know, Russians aren't very friendly, but he comes up, he gives me a hug, and he says, I have some sweats for you. I said, no kidding, Fedor. He goes, yeah. So he sends a guy up to his room, brings back the team sweats, and he has, you know, Fedor, and then he has my name underneath it, and on the back, he has my name. So what made that special, Zach and Alex, is that those are the moments where these suits are created when he's in Russia. But he thought about me back then enough for him to make me some sweats. So that's the kind of love I get from these guys.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Crazy.
What was your experience with Pride as an organization? Because it was in Japan, every different.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. Just there was nothing like pride fights. You know, the first one I was at the Tokyo Dome, you know, and baseball was my game, right? So here I am in the middle of the field, the Tokyo Dome, but the fans were awesome. And but just working the pride fights, like I say, because everybody wanted me to wrap their hands. And I mean, all the big ones from Pride. And, you know, they treated me like gold, you know, so I had those great moments, man. And I went back to, and I did their first Pride show. And it was nice to get back, because I walk into, in fact, I take that back, when the UFC went there for the first time. I'm walking into the arena with my bucket and my bag and my medications before the fight started, and you can hear the fans in the audience, state sign, and man, they're calling out my name, bro, and I got chills, you know. So I love going to Japan.
Man, it's got to be like fighting in a library, though, right? Because the fans are very respectful. They applaud like the fighters. It's a very different culture and fan base than like America. You know, they appreciate. I think they appreciate the fighting more over there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You know, and then they put on shows. But yeah, no, they understand the fight, and it's not so much a win or lose type of situation. It's how you fight. You know, that's where the respect factor comes in. And yeah, man, I've had a blast going up there. Many great memories.
Awesome.
That's incredible.
Zach, you got anything else?
No, not really. I'm still trying to take in all these stories, to be honest.
Yeah, crazy, man. So, you know, then before we end up, is I did write a couple books. Actually, the first one is called From the Fields to the Garden, because I grew up as a farm worker, and my goal was to make it to Madison Square Garden. But I've been there many times. So it details a lot of these stories that I explained to you, plus the way I came up, how I came up, and, you know, follow your dreams, Zach, cross that line. You know, it's very inspirational. And so when the UFC let me go, then people wanted a second book, so I just made a continuation of the first one. But those are available at Amazon.com, and they're nice inspirational books. So
there you go. We'll put the links in the description below. That way our fans can just click it and go take you right to the link and check out From the Fields to the Garden. 2 books by my guy Stitch Duran. He's at Stitch Duran. I'm gonna go right now.
Yeah.
And make sure to check out at Stitch Duran on all social media, your Instagram, the pictures you have on there, unbelievable stuff. It's really just like a highlight reel of boxing history. It truly is. It's truly awesome. Stitch, before we go and wrap it up, we once again thank you for all your time today. We can catch you Tuesdays and Thursdays from the MGM Grand all summer. And then wherever else, other states and other martial arts they open up, I'm sure you'll be there as well. But before we go, we want you to close us out. Anything you have to say before we go?
Yeah, just, you know, you talking about, I have my own line of tape, of course. You know, I'm an entrepreneur with boxing stuff, my own tape and KO as well. But all that's available at Cutman for Hire Supplies. One, I literally had him carry my stuff through a dream. I had a dream that he was carrying my stuff. I called him the next day, and he was glad to, and we partner up. So Cutman for Hire Supplies for all you trainers, and Cutman, it's the only place to go and get your best equipment, and I support him. And but I'm also working with CBD Science. They've created cream for cuts that we've been testing with bare knuckle fighters. So after you get sewn up, apply the cut, and you know, they've been sending us pictures every week, and the results have been tremendous. It really works. Has stem cell and CBD and vitamin E and collagen, and so, and then one more round. Got to finish up with, you know, one more round. And for those that remember, one more round was one of my sponsors until the UFC let me go. And when I was working with Zach with KSI from London, when he fought Logan Paul, I spent time with KSI. Mark Zucker from One More Round saw me, and he contacted me, and we became partners with One More Round. So it's great apparel stuff. Check it out, onemoreround.com.
Nice.
There it is. There you go, Zach. What you got something to say?
Yeah, I just want to say again, like KSI from Watford, like me as well, but just really great, really grateful for you giving us the time to be able to ask you these questions and to interview you. You know, I've heard some amazing answers, and I've obviously got some great advice, which I'm going to use for the future. So I want to say thank you.
Yeah, of course. And you're talking about, you know, being, you know, kind of beating the odds. And I was talking about KSI and these reality show guys. But Anson Gibb, I got to give him credit because KSI was more of an athlete coming into Las Vegas. And but Anson Gibb was, a little chubby kid that lost some weight that did something. And when I met him, I thought, oh, gee, he's going to be in for a tough night. Jake Paul was an athlete. He was a wrestler, so he'd been used to it. But the training that Anson Gibb did here in Las Vegas, he literally morphed into being a fighter. And even though he wasn't a top-notch fighter, he made that transition through hard work and dedication and believing in himself. So, that story that I saw is something that we do because we're all Anson Gibbs. And until you work hard and become who you are, he went out there and challenged the world and went into combat with 2 strikes against him. And he, in my part, ended up hitting a home run. So follow your dreams. They do come true.
Wow, pretty impressive. And I hope they will for me.
They will.
Stitch, you're one cool ass dude, man. Thank you so much for your time. And it'll be up, and we'll send you all the links, and you'll be tagged and everything, and it'll be up shortly. Appreciate it.
All right. Appreciate it. And you guys did a good job.
Thank you ever so much. Thank you.
I've done a lot of interviews, and the questions that you're right, they're not redundant because I understand, but it's nice to hear different questions come at me, and hopefully I got the right answers. So you guys keep it up, man. Do it again anytime.
No, we appreciate it. Yeah, we'll definitely have you on for one more round. That's for sure.
Definitely, hopefully in person next time. You never know.
Yeah, and definitely in person.
All right, and maybe outside of this bubble.